what really catapulted me was joining a team of people that were really successful, and just I go, listen, I'm going to do the things that you suck at. I've seen you do it. I'll do all the shitty work because I'm used to doing shitty work, and I'll do the stuff you're not good at. I'll create success in that role, and then you'll pay me out. You'll pay me good. So that's how I started, and I go into these guys' office. They had like 30 loans closing in a month. I'm like, oh my gosh, I had a pipeline of 3 loans closing in 90 days and 10 potentials that were shitty, like not shitty people, just bad loans. And I'm like, how do you guys have a pipeline so big? Like, I just want to learn. So I learned how to find mentors, and that was huge for me.
So tell me, how old were you when you first started doing that, the fisherman?
I have a picture when I was 4 years old. My dad took me out fishing. We got a limit of, a limit back then was six salmon. And so I was 4. First time I ever went fishing. My dad always had a job. Like, he always used to make the joke. He's like, I've always had a job since I was 12 years old. And I'm like, okay. So when I turned 12, I realized that he was not joking. Like, 12 years old, got on the boat. And it's all I wanted to do, because I was raised by my grandparents, as you know. My mom, drug addict, drug dealer. What a blessing my grandparents stepped in. But my dad always was there trying to create a relationship, and like, we bonded in fishing, right? Like, so 12 years old, started working on the boat, and then 8th grade. My summer of 8th grade year going into high school was like, okay, it's time to really step it up. And then all 4 years of high school, at least 3, well, I was at college for 4. I got 2 done, but 3 years in college. And those summers I worked 90 days straight until my dad fired me when I was a junior in high school. Best summer I ever had. Didn't make any money.
What did you do to piss him off for him to fire you?
I hate it. Like, well, crazy story is that in that time, we were, my dad was just a hard ass, and I'm grateful for it today. But I didn't want to get up early. You go fishing, you get up at 4:30, you get off the boat at 4:30. It's a 12, 14, 15-hour day. When people say they work 60 hours a week, they're full of shit. Because I've worked 60 hours a week, and I know that the people that are talking to me, they're not saying, I work 60 hours. Fuck you. You do not work 60 hours a week. I've worked 60 hours a week. It's not, there's no pride in that. I'm not proud. I'm proud that I put the work in. I'm proud that I learned the lessons of how to show up. But the truth is my old man, he has worked 60 hours a week, at least 6 hours, 6 days a week, 60 hours a week. And since he was 12 years old, up until like last year, he just retired finally.
Wow.
And, so for me, like, I really took pride in working hard. But that summer, I was ready to tell my dad to go fuck himself. Like, I was done with this. I didn't want to be responsible. I wanted to just have fun, just like all my friends. And crazy thing is, I showed up. I remember showed up one morning, and I was like, Dad, like, my balls hurt. And he's like, oh, it's just because you didn't get any last night. You're fine. It's just blue balls. I'm like, no, like, legitimately, there's something wrong. And he's like, no, okay. I'm like, I'm leaving. I got to go to the hospital. He's like, that's bullshit. If you leave the boat today, you're off the boat. You don't get your job. All right, whatever. Went to the doctor, and I had a hernia. But my grandparents were like, hey, we got to go, let's make sure it's just a hernia, right? Like, it's Astoria doctors. No offense if you're from Astoria. You know what I'm talking about. They're not the best. So on Wednesday, I had a hernia. Go to a specialist on Thursday. I have testicular cancer. So cancer Thursday, literally surgery like the very next day. And I'm 17 years old. The only people I've lost in my life, my great-grandparents died from cancer. So I'm like, I'm dying. And I held that one over my dad's head for a long time. Like, he showed up and he's like, I am so sorry. Like, but here's the thing. My dad is so proud of what he does. The next year, I had to earn that job back. Regardless, I had cancer, whatever. I still had to earn that job back. That was my best, worst summer. Like, I had a lot of fun, rode a lot of jet skis, didn't make any money. Great story is I went to work in the restaurant and Stephanie's cabin, and I became the host. I'm like, hey Mo, come on in. Let me get that salad for you. I got that. Like, you don't even have to worry about it. I got this. My last check was negative $347. Like, the best. Like, I love that story. And I came begging for my job back. But so that I worked up until my senior, would have been my fourth year of college. And I just decided that I didn't want to be a fisherman.
But prior to that, did you was your lifelong goal just to be a fisherman? Mm-hmm. Like, that was the thing that you wanted to do?
No, man, I was going to play in the NBA.
Did? Really?
Yeah. Well, that was my absolute.
I mean, I knew you could dunk.
Well, no, I was going to play. Basketball was my. I had two goals in life. I had three, actually. One, I wanted a Lamborghini or Ferrari. Didn't matter, either one. Rich to me meant I didn't wear the same pair of socks more than one time. I've told you that story. Mm-hmm. And then three was to play in the NBA. I thought if I played in the NBA, I could drive the Lamborghini and not have to wear the same socks. So, yeah, man,
So you always aspired to be more. You wanted to get out of, I guess, the small town. You wanted to get out of whatever it was that was created that that had kind of stuck over you, like with your family. For your instance, like your father, whether he believed that he wanted to do that for the rest of his life or not, maybe in his mind he thought that subconsciously he was stuck doing that because he had no other choice.
Yeah, my dad was caught up in, like, loyalty runs deep, He was loyal to my grandfather. My grandfather was a very successful entrepreneur. He's from Montana. When he was 16 years old, he bought a school bus because they didn't have school buses in Montana. Bought a school bus, had the school paid him to pick kids up and drive around. And that was his very first entrepreneurial moment. And then he moved out to the coast and bought a movie theater and started the first movie theater in Hammond or Warrenton, Oregon, small town out the coast. And this old guy, Leo Bushnell, I remember him, took my grandfather out in the ocean one day. He came back and said, I'm selling my I'm selling the theater, I'm buying a boat. Like, he fell in love with the ocean. And that was in the early 50s. Or it might have been 1943, I think my grandfather came in, and my dad was, born in 58. So it was sometime in between that. Mm-hmm. But when I grew up, it was I was born in 82, 6, 7, 8 years old. I remember my grandfather was well respected, was a land mogul, had owned property all over the place. And he started the crab festival, the crab and wine festival. He was part of the board that started that whole thing. It's very big in Oregon now. And I just remember growing up and going in, and there'd be 50 people lined up getting ready to go on the boats, and he'd be out there greeting all the people. And my dad was just always in the background doing all the grunt work. And my dad was an employee mindset. He's like I said, loyalty. He was loyal to my grandfather, and he always had hoped that my grandpa would teach him how to run a business.
This was your father's father?
My grandfather. And so my dad knew how to work hard. He knew how to run a boat. He knew how to keep things in check. But when my grandfather got sick, my grandpa never taught him how to run a business. Mm-hmm. So I don't know where I was going with that, but what was the question?
The question that I was asking was, did you feel like your father maybe was subconsciously stuck?
I think so. That's where I was, loyalty to my grandpa. He wanted he wanted nothing but to make him proud. My grandpa was really old school, mm-hmm. and just wanted to make him proud. But what happened in I want to say it was 1996, my grandpa passed away, or was on his deathbed, and he's like, hey, I did not set things up for you. And in that time, inheritance tax was an issue. And when he passed away, he didn't have a will. So he, as much success as he created, he really didn't set things up, And so the IRS came in and we had 6 boats. They took 4 out of the 6 boats, had to sell all of his properties and all that just to pay inheritance tax alone. So
Wow.
all of their inheritance, all of that he worked for, all of these 50 years went to the IRS.
My God.
And, my dad ended up taking 1 boat and a piece of property, and that's where we started Charlton. Well, he started Charlton Deep Sea Charters, which it was Warrenton Deep Sea was the company back in the day. So I think that it was comfortable for my dad. Like that's what he knew. If you want to go across the Columbia River Bar, the most treacherous bar in the whole world, more deaths, I don't care if you're fishing in Alaska and doing any of that shit, more people have died on the Columbia River Bar than any bar in the whole world. My dad, we've been through some hairy shit, and there's nobody better. But again, I think that it was just like pure loyalty to my grandfather. Like he always wanted to just make him proud.
So then what happened during like high school that you were like, I want a Lamborghini or a Ferrari. I want to be able to buy this.
That was way before that.
That was way before that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So my grandmother, she always told me I could do anything I want. You can do anything you want to do, like legitimately. And I can remember, I don't remember specifically, but like, I just remember like Lamborghini, well, I know what it was. It was Vanilla Ice, right? So he always rode motorcycles and, Ice Baby and all that stuff. But he had a white Lamborghini. There was a video, he had a white Lamborghini Countach. And I love that car. I'm like, man, I'm going to have one of those. And my grandma's like, you absolutely will. Absolutely. I guarantee you'll have one of those. And so I draw that car. Like I had a 6x3 poster. Like I would look at that car and I memorized it. I just fell in love with that car specifically. So she always gave me the confidence is like, you can literally do anything you want to do. And, so I think that's where it stemmed from. And growing up, I had my dad who was very flashy. My dad, we had money. My dad said had money. So my dad always had, nice stuff. He had all the cool stuff. So I get the flashy side from my dad, but then my grandparents were like very frugal, but they also were dreamers. Like they didn't dream, so they dreamed through me. And I think that, I know that was a big piece. They just instilled that like, you can have whatever you want, as long as you're willing to work hard. And I saw both my grandparents, grandfather and grandmother and dad, like they worked their asses off. So I was blessed to have the, great role models to teach me what it looks like to work hard. So, I had no problem working 7 days a week. I had no problem giving up my the summers and having fun. And I had a big fucking problem when people would say you're spoiled, because I'm like, fuck you, man. You have no idea. The 90 days that I was working and you were out fucking off, I was working 12-hour days. And I have a stack of cash. At the end of the summer, I'm like, yeah, bought my truck for cash, lifted my truck, did all this stuff. Like, oh, mommy's boy. Fuck you, man. That is not you have no idea.
Well, that's the thing. So I think the biggest, whether it be generational, whether it be cultural, it doesn't matter. But you started at 12 years old working your ass off, starting to learn the discipline of understanding what it is to work hard. Whereas in today's society, we have the expectation, right? Most kids, we expect to have a certain amount of money every single month, whatever be an allowance, whatever the case may be. I expect to get that job. I expect to get that promotion. It's a mentality that to me has been fucking disgusting in my opinion, but that's not to say that everybody's like that, but it is a staple in society that I'm recognizing as a trend, right? So do you think you would have seen yourself become as successful as you are today if your father hadn't essentially got you on at such an early age to develop that discipline, develop that tenacity and that grit to be able to actually withstand the world as it is versus what it potentially could be?
Absolutely not. Like that's I created something that was inside of me that like there was just this this drive. Being out in the ocean, getting your ass kicked in the winter, like there's nothing more. I hate it. I hated it. Every day I hated it. Like I knew I had to get up, but I would show up because I knew my dad was going to be there before me. He's going to be there warming up the boat. So absolutely not. Like I was committed to my dad first and then the job next. And that's how he, he showed up. He was committed to my grandfather first, job second. But the only thing that, like, I think my dad, there's a couple times he's told me the story where, like, I think my grandfather maybe told him he loved him one time or twice, you know, and what stood out more than that was the one time he said, "I'm proud of you." And that was like on his deathbed, you know, and so, that spoke to me a lot because my dad told me that story a lot. I just wanted my dad to be proud of me. Like I knew he loved me because he was very good at telling me he loved me, but I always wanted him to be proud of me. So showing up, working my ass off, dude, I took that very seriously. And absolutely, if you want to be successful, you have to have work ethic. I don't give a shit how skilled you are. If you don't have work ethic, you will not do it. It's way too fucking hard to create success if you don't want to work hard. Like that's so the answer is absolutely not. Or absolutely yes. So yes.
Hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard, right?
100%.
So let's fast forward to your young adult life where you were in the construction industry. And you said that there was a time where you had a lot of consistent work, but then it got a little bit inconsistent, which led you to getting into the industry that you are in now.
Yeah.
The biggest thing is, I feel like outside of maybe scarcity, outside of just the pure need to be able to have consistency in income and being able to provide, was there anything that just tipped you off into saying, this is it, like I need to make a decision now, something has to change, I can't keep doing this anymore? What was it what kind of shift did you have in your mind, or were you just completely thinking logically saying, I need to fucking do something with
Wasn't logic. So I dropped out of college. I was there for 4 years, was getting in trouble, got arrested a couple times. And I'm like, you know, either I'm going to end up in jail. I'm not going to finish school. I know that. So I left, and I knew I didn't want to go fishing because I hated like I love my dad, but I hated fishing. Like I said, it was not my. I hated it. So my grandfather was a lineman, so he worked in the power company for 30 years, and he retired from that in Astoria and drove I think I was like 14 or 15 years old, all through my high school. He would drive to Portland, just 2 hours away every morning, 2 hours away, drive to Portland, do his work, come back home. Because that was, you know, he retired from one job, but he wasn't done. And I called him, I remember it was like May. I'm like, hey, I don't want to go fishing. I'm not going to finish college. And they had put me through college, by the way.
So I'm sure that was like a big blow.
I'm sorry for not. I don't want to finish college, but I want to do what you do. Like I like the life that you provided for me as a kid. Like I want to know what you know. I know I don't want to go fishing. So what can I do? He goes, go get your CDL and we'll talk about it. So within a week, I had passed all my CDL stuff. I'm like, all right, the only thing I need is a truck because I don't have a CDL truck. He's like, wow, you're really. I'm like, yeah, I am not going fishing. And so that was like. I think I don't even know, 2005. So it was whatever, 24 or something like that, but 23 years old. And I'm like, it's only going to be a summer. I'm going to go back to school. I really want to finish college. I want to finish what I started. I didn't show up. I took it for granted. And my excuse, and I think it's a valid excuse, but is that I worked my ass off every summer until the one summer I got fired, and then through college. I never got a chance to have fun. When I went to college, I went crazy. Like I just partied, had a good time. And I was really like, I could always wing it, you know, and get C's. And so I got through college for a couple years pretty good. And then I got into economic theory. I remember that class kicked my ass. 3 times I failed it, but I was like, oh shit, I have to try now. And I didn't.
And now you're in the mortgage industry.
Well, yeah, but I got into construction because I thought that was something
Right.
that he wanted me to do, and I did it. And I worked with incredible people. And you said there was consistency in work. So for 5 years, it was a summer job that turned into 7 years. Or I always say 7. Like my team's always like 7 years. We've been working together 7. But I started as a laborer and worked my way up to superintendent of a drilling company. So like I just would work with great people, and they're like, and at this time I had this very wealthy guy he was one of the founders of Sprint, who went fishing on my dad's boat. And he gave me the book Think and Grow Rich. He's like, read this book. I read it 3 times and I'm like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, what's that whole book, it talks about, when you'll know, the message will come to you when it comes to you. I'm like, this is bullshit. Like, but this guy just had and I started reading and I got into Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Poor Dad. I started looking at how can I become a real estate investor. And I'd be talking about this with all the construction guys, and they're like, why do you want it? Like, dude, you got a great job. You're making $18 an hour. Mm-hmm. I'm like, I know. Like, I could pay my truck payment on the first week, pay my rent the second week, pay my credit card bill the third week, and then I can drink with the rest. And as long as I had $10 in the bank, I was like, we're good. If I'm not overdrawn, we're good, man. But these guys were like, don't work too hard. You're going to work yourself out of a job. Why do you want to be a leader? Why do you want to become a foreman? Like, I'm content. I'm like, I'm not, man. I respect that you're content, but fuck that. That is like your life. I think it works for you. That is not the life I want to live. Like, I seriously still want that Countach in the garage. They didn't make it then, so I'm like, shit, it's got to be a Diablo. But so I just always had this drive to wanted to do more. Like, I didn't want to be. I just content. The word content, if you ask my wife now, she's got a much different definition. But when I heard content, it was like, I'm going to settle. Mm-hmm. And I hated that. I'm like, I'm not going to settle for anything. So I was blessed to get laid off one weekend. And I had some friends that were going to school at BYU. And they're like, hey, you seem like a good leader. Will you come out this summer and sell satellite dishes door to door? I'm like, what? Okay, cool. And I had just met my wife. Like, I met her like 2 months before that. And I'm like, hey, I know it sounds crazy. I'm going to move to, we were going to go to Tennessee. We're going to go to Nashville or somewhere in Tennessee. I don't think it was Nashville. That would have been way too cool. And I'm like, hey, you want to go to Tennessee with me? She's like, yeah. I'm like, oh shit. Okay, cool. So I quit my job and, I went to Nashville, and we're in South Dakota on the way to Nashville, and this company calls us. So I quit my construction job, my safe job. I had 3 days off in like 4 years. Like, in construction, that's almost unheard of, right? So, we had a really high producing team in construction. We had the highest profiting group, my group. Like, we would make the most money per foot. So we used to drill in whatever, but I was proud of that. Like, we go out and kick everybody's ass. And so, backing up the story is that I used to be the tester for this machine. I'm pretty good at operating machinery. So, drilling. I just got into drilling, started crushing it, and then fast forward to meeting that guy. He's like, "Hey, you can make $40,000 this summer if you go out and work the whole summer." And I was making about $60,000 a year. And I'm like, "Oh, that's amazing. Let's do it." So I met this beautiful woman, and I'm like, "Hey, let's do it." And she's like, well, I'm down. I've never been to Tennessee. I'm like, I'm sold. I was already sold. Like, I was already going to marry her. So she didn't know it yet. But we ended up in South Dakota. They call us and they're like, "Hey, you're not going to Nashville now. You're going to Indiana, a little town called Fort Wayne." I'm like, okay. I mean, that seems weird. Like, we literally uprooted our whole lives to move to Nashville and sell for you guys, but you're changing it when we're midway, but whatever. So we get there and it was a nightmare. We lost our ass, but I learned a lot. And I learned that I could drive 26 hours straight because I couldn't afford to pull over. And I was listening to Jim Rohn, Brian Tracy, like I had all these things, and I could just remember I was hearing Jim Rome's voice speaking to me while I'm driving through the desert, and it was just like this one like black hole. And my wife sleeping wasn't my wife at the time, but she slept literally. I don't know how she slept for 26 hours, but she did. And she goes, "Hey, we get to we gave up. We get to Eastern Oregon." She goes, "Hey, I think I should drive." And we drove from Fort Wayne, Indiana, to Oregon, and she goes, "It's my turn to drive." I'm like, "Oh, thank God," because I don't know how we made it this far. The last 8 hours, 4 states, I don't remember. But, so I go off on tangents, and I forgot what your question was.
That's all right. You pretty much summed it up. But going back to the primary question, which was how, at one point, did you realize that you wanted to shift into the mortgage industry, and then what was it that triggered you into doing that? So you've had this negative situation that taught you a lesson.
Which one?
The one about Tennessee.
I didn't look at it. So here's what happened. We got home. We moved back to Astoria. Moved in with my grandparents. It was 2007. And I told my dad, "Hey, Dad, I want to crab for you. I've never crabbed so I went back to fishing.
Okay.
And it was 2007. And he goes, "Are you sure?" I'm like, "Yeah, let me give it a shot. I always worked in the summer. I never worked in the winter." I'm like, "You know what? Like, let's do it." It was all ego and pride, because I didn't want to go back to the construction company because all these guys said, "You're going to fail. Why would you give up something that's consistent to go do something that there's, it's not guaranteed?" I'm like, because I can always come back to this. But I was so proud, because I told those guys to fuck off. I'm like, I'm going to go make $1 million. I'm going to roll up in here in my whatever, and you're going to be like, "Oh, damn, he was right." And I failed miserably because I aligned myself with the wrong company. Mm-hmm. But the lessons that came from that were like so valuable. But I went back home, and God happened to give us the worst storm of all time in 2007. So, like, definitely it was divine that I was not supposed to be a fisherman. Like, we went out and we got 2 deliveries in, and storm came. We had 40-foot, we're on a 50-foot boat, 40-foot swells. So that's a 40-foot wave. Mm-hmm. But you're not counting when you go into the trough. So it's 80 feet down. Damn. You're looking at a wall of water. And that we came in over that, and we lost. It was the worst year ever of crabbing. So, like I said, like, there was a few opportunities for me to go back into that business, just because, like, that was comfortable, and like I got smacked in the face every time. And even my dad was like, "Hey, you can't do this. Like, you just can't." Well, he would say, "You're better than this." I'm like, "I'm better than anything. Like, I want to do this with you." He's like, "Don't do it." So I went back to construction.
So he tried to deter you?
Oh yeah, he's like, he loved the ocean. Like, he still loves the ocean. I'm like, I hate the ocean, but he's like, "I know it's like, this is not a way to, this will not get you to where you want to go." And he goes, "I wish I could teach you. I wish I could give you the skills that his dad had." Because I saw that. Like, I saw what it looked like to be, follow your dreams and create something, just to create something, and then give back to the community. Like, he was super involved in the community. And I wish, like, if I could turn back time, I wish I would have been old enough to understand all the gifts that he gave us as grandchildren, because he poured into us, but we were so young. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, so my dad he never wanted me to go fishing. Like, he was so proud of me to come back and do it. But I remember, like, I think it was like April. Usually crab seasons go from December to June. He's like, "You got to leave. Like, you can't make it. You got to go do something else." So I went back and got my job back at construction. And a couple years into that, we started, So got back into construction, and my wife started competing she was my wife at that time. So she started competing in bodybuilding or women's figure and bikini. And then we joined a team, and there was 5 realtors, of course, and 1 lender on that team. And I had still continued to try to invest in real estate, got into this is pre-crash, so we're trying to do all this stuff, and crash comes, '08. There's a ton of opportunity for these short sales and all this stuff. So I bought into a company. I spent like $2,700. I had $2,800 in the bank to buy into this company and to teach me how to buy short sales and find these. And I found multiple opportunities and tried to do this, and all the while working construction, because I knew I didn't want to do construction, but it was good money. And so I did that for another 3 or 4 years. In 2010, I took a job downtown Portland. I told Colby, I'm like, hey, this is my last job. I'm going to either become a realtor or I'm going to get into something else. And I interviewed a bunch of real estate agents, and they're like, hey, when you get your license, we'll hire you 100%. And I was like, fuck, I'm a big deal. Like these guys want me, I'm going to crush it. And I didn't know, I had no idea, like I didn't cost them anything. If I got my license, it's just, if I do something, they're going to benefit. So I went back, I'm like, going to get my real estate license. And the team we were on for bodybuilding, they were like, well, yeah, you're going to do great. And then this lender, her name's Annie, she's like, why don't you come check out what we do? So I went to college for business and finance, got kicked out of business. So I went to economics. I thought that was the next closest thing to business. And it was, but it was way harder. So I failed out of that too. But I always wanted to understand money and how that works and how to create turn opportunity into money. Because I still wanted the Ferrari or the Lambo. I've since learned that I don't fit in Lamborghinis, so I like Ferraris. So I'm still working on that one. But I talked to that lady, and she goes, come check out what we do in lending. And I went with her, and I'm like, man, this seems so much more up my alley. So I came home after doing that job shadow, and I go, babe, I'm going to become a loan officer. There's people that are less skilled than I am. There's a lot of people getting it because it was after the crash. 60% of loan officers got out of the business. And I'm like, if I can do it now, I'll be successful regardless. She goes, oh, awesome, I support you. Like she's always, I could say we're going to go, like Sebastian would say, sell ice to Eskimo. She'd be like, you're going to do it. Like she's always been my biggest fan. So I was like, all right. So I took that.
She's always been that way from day one.
Yeah. I mean, she moved to Nashville, which we were in Fort Wayne, Indiana. She's like, whatever. She dropped out of FIDM. Like that's a very prestigious fashion design school in LA. She got accepted to LA, to FIDM when I met her. And I always say she thought I was rich because I always had a nice truck. Like I always liked nice things. So I always had a nice truck, but I was broke. And I rolled up in that coffee shop that she owned, and I'm like, she thought I was rich. But I'm like, hey, you're not going to LA. You're going to move with me. So I ruined that for her. So I've been trying to make up for that one for a while. But yeah, so I took a job, and it was the highest paying construction job I've ever had. So I was making like $57 an hour, working 60 hours a week. So I was back to working my ass off and making good money. And
studying for your license.
And because I was a machine operator, this job just happened to be every hour I'd only work for like 10 minutes, like actually run the machine for 10 minutes. So I was reading books, I'm reading books on mortgage, I was reading books on real estate. One book that really spoke to me was Missed Fortune by Douglas Andrew. And it talked about how to utilize your mortgage to create financial wealth with all these insurance vehicles, and all of that stuff was pre-crash. So it still works, but it was a lot different. But I was like, oh shit, this is how I'm going to do it. Like I'm going to create my real estate company by doing loans. And so finished up that job, got my license, went to work with the lady that introduced me, and got in there. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to make it, And the guy that was training me, first week in, got trained up. Second week, guy was training me quit. That's weird. Next week, the other guy that was training me quit. So by the third or fourth week, there was just me, the lady that recruited me, an assistant, and me. And I'm like, what's going on? Like, we're in trouble here, I think. And all they taught me, the one thing that they taught me was go network. So I met this guy named James, who was a financial advisor. Crazy, James. Mm-hmm. Stinky James. Mm-hmm. And he's like, he used to be a mortgage coach. used to coach people in mortgage lending. And at that time, I was in pretty good shape because I was competing in bodybuilding. He's like, hey, you're in good shape. How can I learn from you? I'm like, well, what do you do? And he's like, well, I used to coach mortgage people. I'm like, holy shit. You can teach me in mortgage, and I'll teach you how to get in shape. Deal? Yeah, cool. So he taught me, and he's like, hey, let me look at your contract. And I was like, okay. He goes, oh, if this was me, I'd shoot myself in the head. You're getting fucked right now. You should not be there. It's the worst deal. This is not the company for you. I'm like, great. Well, I quit a $150,000 job a year, whatever, to bet everything. My wife's believing in me on this one deal, and I don't blame them for that. Like it was a good deal now looking back, but from his eyes, he knew that they weren't giving me what I should have to create success. And he goes, I'm going to set up 6 interviews for you with people I know. And so about 3 months in, I left my first company, went to another company, and I did my due diligence then. And I walked into, I still work with this guy. His name is Patrick. I walked in and I'm like, hey, I'm going to be your top loan officer. He goes, really? How many loans you close? I said 3 in 3 months. He said, that ain't going to happen, bud. I'm like, okay, you give me a shot? He's like, yeah. All right. So he I was like, all right, I'm going to make $1 million this year. And he's like, good luck. And I'm like, oh, it's going to happen. So so that was kind of like the transition getting into mortgage. And first year I did not make $1 million. I made $14,000. I left a $150,000 a year job. I say I made a lot of money that year, but to make $14K. Second year, $37,000. Third year, I really crushed it and made $79,000. And then I was blessed to double my income every year up until about my 5th year into the business, where I made a transition from that company to another company. So, I mean, I like you say, how did you create success? Like all of that created success. Like financially, I always was driven to make money because I wanted the fucking Diablo because they did stop making Countachs.
Yeah, let's trickle back just real quick. So your first year you made 17,000. 14,000. Your second year you made 37,000.
Yeah.
And then your third year you made 79,000.
Yeah, I broke $100,000 in my 4th year.
Your 4th year you broke $100,000. The general consensus in most people is that, again, the instant gratification, that they're gonna just automatically assume. You yourself said that you were gonna make $1 million the first year, right? Which is what most of us do. But you having the ability to stick through it, I'm sure that first year was very, very tough. A strain on your relationship with your wife, a strain on your own mental clarity, and did you ever doubt yourself? Did you ever have, thoughts of like, am I doing the right thing? Should I go back to construction?
Here's what's great. Like I would go home on the weekends and fish because that's where I could make good money.
Yeah.
So that's what kept us afloat. But it was a great reminder that I'm like, if I'm not successful here, that's where I'm going to go. So the fishing piece was always a constant reminder of like, hey, this is waiting for you if you're not successful. So I did everything that I could to definitely not go back. And what really catapulted me was joining a team of people that were really successful, and I go, listen, I'm going to do the things that you suck at. I've seen you do it. I'll do all the shitty work because I'm used to doing shitty work, and I'll do the stuff you're not good at. I'll create success in that role, and then you'll pay me out. You'll pay me good. So that's how I started. And I go into these guys' office. They had like 30 loans closing in a month. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I had a pipeline of 3 loans closing in 90 days and 10 potentials that were shitty. Like not shitty people, just bad loans. And I'm like, how do you guys have a pipeline so big? Like, I want to learn. So I learned how to find mentors, and that was huge for me. And that's also what, fast forward to today, that's what's created, in my opinion, has created the success that we've experienced. Is that I define success in how much impact we make in people's lives, not how much money we make. Now, I like to make money because I still don't have the Countach because they're hard to find now, especially. But I don't have all of that. And I was in pursuit of money for a long time. I define success in how many lives we can create impact in. And we create impact in multiple ways. One with our business partners, one with the people that we're actually doing the loans for, and then most importantly, the people that are raising their hand and saying, hey, I want you to help me get to where you're at. And that's where I love what I do. Like that's what creates fulfillment for me. And that's what's created success for me, because that's where I get energy from. I get energy from saying, hey, you're just like me. Let me show you a few of the steps that are going to make this process not easier, but I'm going to help you set yourself up for success, because I know you're going to make $1 million this year. The truth is, if you can make 30, you're going to quadruple what I would have made, and you're still going to have success on that, right? On the path. So I don't know.
So the two very important things that you mentioned was like number one that really attributes to your success was surrounding yourself with the right people.
What is your definition of success, though? I'm curious. Like you keep saying that.
Yeah. So my definition of success is doing what I want to do when the fuck I want to do it, and having the ability to do that. Okay. But
so I'm not successful then.
You're very successful.
I'm. That's not an ego thing. I don't do everything I want to do.
Well, no, having the ability to do what you want to do, right? Within obviously the confines of our existence.
Okay.
Right. So and
that's still limiting belief, but that's fine.
But yeah. So and so for me is I'll give you an example. If a family member needs a hospital bill paid for, done. Mm-hmm. If tomorrow my wife decides that she wants to go to Mexico, done. Whatever the case may be, having the financial ability to do that, because the thing is that most people think that money is evil, right?
Yeah.
That's the mindset that I see, versus where money is leveraged as a tool to be able to provide a life that is enjoyable, right? Because I don't want to have to live, below my means and almost be punished on a day-to-day basis, and then punish my family because I'm not able to provide a life that they deserve, right? And so it's not necessarily a monetary goal, it's just a necessity of independence. Is the way that I look at success.
That's great.
That's my definition.
Good.
So again, going back to the success thing, you were saying surrounding yourself with the right people, which I think is important, because that's going to help eliminate a lot of the limiting beliefs, get you out of funks, and understand that there are people that are light years ahead of you that think a completely different way. Being here today with you guys as an example is understanding that I'm not looking at things the way that I should, and everybody has a different perspective and different levels of life. So surrounding yourself with people that not necessarily are above you, but are in different frames of mind, different paces of life, whatever the case may be, that's going to attribute a lot, because you're going to get something out of it that you have never maybe potentially thought of before. Yeah. For instance, what if you come from an environment that you don't see fancy cars, you don't see, successful people walking down the street, and all of a sudden you show up at somebody's house and everybody's wearing a Rolex and you've got Lamborghinis in the driveway, and they seem incredibly humble and talking about things that you never even thought about before. Your mind starts playing, it just starts thinking of things differently. That's why
fucks you up, because you're like,
right.
I thought these people were evil,
or
like because you're
right.
One
or
thing
drug
you
dealers
said
or some
should,
shit.
like,
yes.
Don't shit on yourself,
right?
Because you shouldn't do anything, but
right.
Because what I see in you is that you have incredible value, because you speak into people's lives in the way you've spoken into mine. Like you specifically have helped me grow, expand my vision of what success looks like.
That's
and I'm giving you a hard time. No, it's not. I give you a hard time about financial, because we always talk about being successful. Like I want to make as much money as I possibly can.
Deal. Done.
I do. Yeah. And it doesn't mean
1,000%. It's not bad.
But that doesn't define me.
Right.
Like at a certain point, I'm going to say I don't need any more. But I haven't experienced that yet. And I'm excited to help others create financial success, because financial success creates the opportunity to do all of those other things you're talking about. Money is a vehicle to get you to where you want to go. It's a vehicle to invest in people's lives. It's a vehicle to do all of these other things, like pay for your parents' doctor bills, take your family on vacation, take all of your family on vacation, which was a gift that I gave my family 3 or 4 years ago. We took them all to Mexico. And like, that was one of the hardest things for them to receive.
Yeah.
And it wasn't to show off. It was just like, I just want you to understand, like, this is not for me, it's for us. Mm-hmm. Like, I do certain little things. Like, I like Rolexes, I like watches, like, I like stuff like that. But, those don't define who I am. Those are like tokens for my success, in my own opinion. Mm-hmm. That's how I like to give myself gifts, because I just like gifts for myself.
I'm with you.
But
I'm with you 100%. But I just wanted to just reference back to this, is that, so the first thing was talking about surrounding yourself with great people. The other thing was, you were mentioning, was mentorship. Mm-hmm. I think coaching is, I didn't realize personally how valuable coaching was until we really started to break through that barrier, that mental block that I had. Like, what's the difference of me reading a book or learning from someone online versus being taught live, like on demand, right? How has that affected not only your business but your personal life? Just being coached and finding the right mentorship.
Being coached?
Yeah. And why do you think it's important?
Like you said, from a business perspective, I found people that would teach me from a mentorship. The only thing that they taught me was mechanics. Yeah. They had zero mindset. Mm-hmm. The thing that my value to them was that I could bring mindset into that. Like, you can do this. And they had been in the industry for so long, they were just really bitter. Like, and I have been there, but they were at a point where they were just bitter. They're like, I hate my clients, I hate my realtors, I hate blah, 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 blah. And they're making, at that time, they're doing really well, pretty good financially, but they hated everything. And I'm like, well, what if we, let's shift our mindset and let me do the stuff that you dislike so much that make you a miserable person in the office, because I don't like being around you either. And let me help you see, why you actually got into, let me remind you of this. And so, as this laborer, I come in and did all the shitty work, I also help them with mindset. And they're like, wow, we're and fulfillment factor went through the roof. Our team success expanded. And, so I found something in that moment, where I was like, man, this is just like having a basketball coach. They're helping you see yourself differently. Mm-hmm. You don't pivot this way, you pivot that way. If you pivot this way, use the glass, and it's just different. They see it differently. You say it, you're like, man, that actually worked. And then all of a sudden you start scoring more buckets. You're having more fun, but it's because you're doing things in a way that suits you, So for me, I always wanted to have a coach. I had a coach when I was 5th grade who kind of really poured into me. He was the mayor of the town, amazing dude. And from 5th grade to 8th grade, he coached me in basketball. And he was an intense dude, but I learned so much. And all I ever wanted, for me, I always wanted people, words of affirmation is how I feel loved. Mm-hmm. So he never really said he was proud, and a couple of times, but that spoke so much to me. But I also realized how much seeing somebody who had skills and they could just share, and he poured into me in such a different way that I had never experienced. So I was like, man, I just want to do that at whatever capacity I could.
Without asking for anything.
In lending, I didn't have the skills to create loans, but I could create relationship. Mm-hmm. And that's how I got the job in the first place. So fast forwarding to today, I've always had a coach in some way, whether it was, my wife has been the best coach I've ever had. She sees things differently than I do, and it used to frustrate the hell out of me. But she's always helped me see things in a different light. And so I've always had a coach since I met my wife, 13 years, it's been a while. I married 11, but the biggest shift for me was just I met a coach that I hired that stopped coaching me and started asking me questions. Like, it wasn't like, hey, here's the 5 things you need to do. When you do this, you're going to create success. They're like, hey, what's important to you? Like, what do you truly want? Like, why do you want to be, like, when you get to this goal, what does that mean? What changes for you? And they started to help me think differently. So I've always wanted to surround myself by people that ask really difficult questions. Mm-hmm. As uncomfortable as it is, like, I don't like getting on stage talking in front of people. Nobody really likes that. I mean, some people do, but it's a learned skill. It's, but for me, it was just learning how to ask questions. So coaching for me specifically, though, it was people that were willing to poke holes or shine light in the places that I didn't want light shined on. And that's where success in my life has come from, is looking into the dark places that I don't want to experience. I don't want to go there, bringing it out into the light, and then realizing how much that has held me back. And then I can sit down and literally have a conversation about any of those things now because I'm comfortable with it. But like a coach, for me, that's what a true coach, in my opinion, does, is they help you see what's limiting you and then help you also find the solution. They don't give the solution to you. And so some of my coaches have literally and figuratively and literally punched me in the face. And for me, I just happen to need that kind of coaching. So not everybody needs that, but that's what serves me.
I love it. I love to end with this. What is one book that you would highly recommend people to read? And then one question that everybody should be asking themselves.
One book.
You can do 5, but I'm just keeping it simple.
The Richest Man in Babylon was a very impactful book for me. And like when I read it, I didn't really know what faith meant to me. I didn't know, like I'm a Christian now, but I didn't know what that meant. Mm-hmm. And it really put things into perspective because of the history, right? Like, it's in the Bible. So that book really shifted my life. Think and Grow Rich also was one that I had to read multiple times because I read it when I think it was 14 years old, and I had no idea what power was there. And I guess a question.
What's a question that you
what's
would ask
another
yourself?
possibility? Like what? I mean, I've learned that in this year. I have a coach currently that's helped me see. That's what this hat stands for, like the 95%. Like, what's another possibility? What's another, like, this is what, if we live our lives in default mode, if you say something that offends me, I just hold on to that offense as that's the reality, then I've already closed off any possibilities of anything different. And most of us live in this default state, and that's the problem with our world right now.
Yeah, and I also believe that default state creates resentment. And a wise man once said that resentment is like letting someone live inside of your head rent-free. And it becomes toxic, and then it starts to spew slowly out of your pores, at least for me.
Yeah.
I love it. I appreciate your time, brother.
Love you, man.
That was awesome.